I'm Bailey Griffin, and I did my research paper asking, does vocabulary impact a learner's comprehension? And I read 3 scholarly articles, and what I found is that overall it does. The first article that I read was called The Impact of Vocabulary Knowledge on EFL Reading Comprehension. So this was on students who speak English as a second language, and it was by Kimeli and Becky. And the other article that I read was titled The Direct and Indirect Effects of Word Reading and Vocabulary on Adolescents' Reading Comprehension, Comparing Struggling and Adequate Comprehenders. So it took their vocabulary and then it also separated them into 2 subgroups of on-level and below-level students, and saw different interventions and their impact on comprehension, and one of them was vocabulary. And that was by Osland Clemens and Deborah and Leslie Simmons. And then the last article that I read was the effects of morphemic vocabulary instruction, so an intervention using morphemic vocabulary on prefix vocabulary and sentence comprehension. So the sentence comprehension was the reading comprehension portion for middle school students with learning disabilities. So this pertained to students who were reading below their grade level. And this was by Brown, Harris, Forbush. So it took the effect of morphemic vocabulary instruction, its impact on vocabulary, and its impact on reading comprehension. All right. So that was the purpose of my study. Yes, vocabulary impacts reading comprehension. And then in my lit review, I planned to address low readers, high readers, older readers, and EFL readers. And then the morphemic intervention goes to my implications section. And I created this graphic organizer before I wrote the paper. So then those are the things that I addressed in my lit review. And then my focus was technically on older readers because 4th graders are at a higher reading level than lower elementary. So I used my students' iReady data of their vocabulary score and reading comprehension score in the fall, and then saw and charted the growth and improvement for the winter. So that was my methods, results, and discussion of my paper portion. And then the implications is that vocabulary does have value because multiple studies have shown that it impacts reading comprehension. And then the question for the recommendations would be, how do we best teach vocabulary? Because a morphemic intervention was done, and it actually showed that it didn't help students' vocabulary. So then the question for further study would be, what does improve vocabulary because it impacts reading comprehension? Things that were uncomfortable and difficult were really breaking down my students' data and seeing how I can compare them and what's important and what isn't important. And I think I learned how important vocabulary instruction is for students because I feel like it's overlooked a lot in the typical classroom. And I definitely recommend this topic. And like I was saying, I think how to best teach vocabulary is the most interesting part of my study once I learned how important it was. So that's everything that I learned for the impact of vocabulary on reading comprehension.